Action, another name for a lawsuit. An action is short for a court action, which is another name for a lawsuit. Partition action, court order to divide common tenancy property ownership. Tenancy refers to how title of real property can be held by more than one person at a time. There are 4 types of tenancy: common tenancy, joint tenancy, partnership tenancy, and community property tenancy. In common tenancy, title can be taken at different times by the different owners. Title can be taken by different owners on different deeds. Ownership interests do not have to be the same. Parentheses, one owner can have a 90% ownership interest and the other a 10% ownership interest in the property. End parentheses. Owners in common tenancy have only one unity, that of equal right of possession or undivided interest. All owners have an equal right to occupy and use the property. Because of common tenancy's flexibility for multiple owners, it is more likely to become embroiled in a situation where the court finds it necessary to force a separation of owners of real property who hold title through common tenancy. A partition action is a court order to separate ownership of real property held through common tenancy. Related words: common tenancy. Conformity. Harmony of structures in an area adds value. Conformity of the conformity principle says that the structures in an area or neighborhood should all be of similar design, size, shape, and rough value. The principle says that the harmony of the area or neighborhood produces the highest overall value for all the properties in the area. Conformity works toward the result of the highest and best use. Highest and best use is pretty much what it says, being the most valuable use of a given property, considering the financial perspective too, and sometimes mostly. The principle of progression and the principle of regression state that the value of an inferior property will be brought up by a consistent set of higher value properties, and the value of a superior property will be brought down by a consistent set of lower value properties in a neighborhood or area. Conformity is a consistency issue of the structures in an area or neighborhood. Synonyms: conformity principle. Related words: principle of progression, principle of regression, highest and best use. Homestead. Owned real property used as a family home. A homestead is a real property which is used and occupied by its owners as a family home. The term is important because a homestead is protected by law from unsecured creditors. A homestead declaration, filed with the county clerk, officially establishes a property as a homestead. The homestead protections in bankruptcy are from unsecured creditors, that is, things like credit card debt. The homestead exemption does not protect a home from foreclosure from mortgages and trust deeds. These are secured debt, secured by the property. The homestead exemption is limited to protecting the first $75,000 of a home's value from a judgment against the head of household. A mentally or physically disabled person can be protected from unsecured debt judgments up to $150,000. The homestead declaration must be filed prior to the judgment to be valid. Related words: abandonment of homestead. Documentary transfer tax, fee paid by city and/or county to transfer title. The documentary transfer tax is a fee to the city or county (or both) receives to complete a property transfer. The fee is used to cover the cost of paperwork and the personnel to do the paperwork. The transfer tax amount is calculated on the equity transferred. Therefore, if a loan is assumed, the tax is calculated excluding the amount of the assumed loan. The documentary transfer tax in general is $1.10 per 1,000 or 55 cents per 500. Specifics depend on the county and the city the property is in. The documentary transfer tax is a fee paid to the city or county, or both, to complete a property transfer. Marketable title, title which can be transferred without encumbrances. In human relationships, new relationships often run into trouble from, quote, emotional baggage, end quote. In general, there can be problems which linger from prior relationships. With property, when property is transferred from one person or entity to another, we want to know that there will be no previous commitments that limit the transfer in some way, parentheses, we don't want any, quote, baggage, end quote, end parentheses. Marketable title refers to a property with no baggage, called encumbrances of any kind. Over time, the issue has been such a problem that different methods have been used to ensure marketable title. Today, we use title insurance. The insurance company does enough research on the title of a property to satisfy themselves that the title is free to transfer cleanly, and therefore gives the buyer an insurance policy that it will make the buyer whole if the title runs into any problems with transfer. A property which is unencumbered and free of any quote-unquote baggage in conveyance is said to have a marketable title. Variance, granted exception to existing zoning. The practice of zoning sets up rules which have to be complied with, including building codes. Given specific circumstances, the rules can be altered, and this practice is called a variance. Estate, ownership rights in real property. An estate is the ownership interest or claim that a person has in real property. The two types of estates are freehold estate and less than freehold estate. A less than freehold estate is the estate held by a tenant who leases (rents) a property, also known as a leasehold estate. A freehold estate is an estate for an indefinite duration and can be sold or inherited and includes estate in fee, life estate, fee simple absolute, and fee simple qualified. An estate is the ownership interest or claim that a person has in real property. Related words: freehold estate, less than freehold estate. Inflation, rising prices and/or decrease in the value of money. Inflation is one or both of two things: the reduction of the value of money or the rising of prices. In either or both cases, the result is less buying power of money. In general, inflation on some level (4% for example) is unavoidable and possibly even preferable. Anything greater than this is potentially a problem, as people will become reluctant to save money as it is constantly losing value. Better to spend it right away because every minute waited loses even more value. High inflation is called hyperinflation. Stories stick in my mind of times when a, quote, wheelbarrow of money, end quote, was required to buy even a single loaf of bread. The opposite of inflation is deflation. Deflation is also a problem as assets, like homes, for example, are worth less and less. Inflation is the rising of prices or the decreasing of the value of money, or both. Final tract map. Recorded tract map with changes to tentative tract map. The Subdivision Map Act is a, quote, big picture, end quote, planning perspective of a subdivision. First, planning is considered from the perspective of coordinating all interior aspects of the subdivision like roads, utilities, and flow. Second, the Act deals with the coordinating of subdivision with the outside aspects like roads, arteries, and services around the subdivision, so that the outside area is not over-impacted. Moreover, the goal of the Act is that the subdivision complement the community as a whole. The Subdivision Map Act includes a tentative tract map, which is the proposal of the subdivision, and a final tract map, which includes any changes to the tentative tract map and is recorded with the county recorder. For land that is being divided into 4 or less parcels, a parcel map is used. The Subdivision Map Act is different from the Subdivided Lands Law because the Subdivided Lands Law deals with the sale of parcels from subdivided property. The Subdivision Map Act deals with the subdivision interior and exterior planning.